Day 9 of the 90-day challenge. My calculations, that's 10%. Pretty excited about that. And in this 90-day challenge, I am challenging myself to create some content every day, 7 days a week, for the purposes of using a thing called the Feynman method, which is a simple process to try to explain more clearly potentially complex ideas. But the reason I'm doing that is many years ago, I heard Tony Robbins say that we teach what we most need to learn. And it is something that I really believe in, that to learn things at a deeper level, the key is to teach it. So that's the driver behind this 90-day challenge. In this video number 9, just want to unpack the concept of what are called generally accepted practices, or call them gaps, versus getting on base. And to help you to understand that, you probably need to have watched the movie Moneyball, Brad Pitt. There's also a book out called Moneyball, and the book is a little different to the movie, and obviously Hollywood have done their thing on the movie and made it more interesting to watch. There's a lot of detail in the book that's not in the movie, but the principles are really cool. And one of the principles is that they identify that there's an epidemic failure to understand where to spend the money. Like the majority of teams in the early 2000s were spending lots and lots of money on players because of their potential. So they could hit, they could run fast, they had the skills, but they were buying players based on their potential. And because the Oakland A's in this movie were a very poor team and had somewhere a third to a fifth of the budget that the rich teams had, they couldn't spend money on players and get it wrong. So they needed to find a way to be able to get players less expensively because they didn't have the budget, and they had to make sure that it was the right buy, if you like. And what had happened is that they had come up with, or they were influenced by, a book by Bill James, who had created a whole bunch of algorithms and mathematic formulas to distill the essence of what makes a successful player. So traditionally, the scouts would go out and they would look at, he swings well and he looks athletic and he's got the face. They even had that saying, and they've got all of this nebulous, unclear reasoning as to why they felt that person is going to be a superstar. The Oakland A's couldn't afford to do that. So they were influenced by this Bill James idea of looking at the maths. And what they found, and it took me a little while to understand this, and it is very simple, but it took me quite a few goes to really understand it, was what they were doing was they understood, or Bill James understood, that you can't score when you're in the field in baseball. You have to be at bat. You can only score runs when you're batting. And so the key is to stay batting as long as possible and not get out, because that's how you stay batting and have the ability to score. And what they focused on was buying players who had a very high percentage of being able to get on base, which means getting to first base every time they went to bat. And that was the metric that they used to hire people. And the beauty of it was that there were lots of underutilized players that the majority of the baseball industry rejected because they were too old, they threw funny, they waddled when they walked, all of this sort of stuff. But each of these players, these misfits, and according to most other people in the industry, were broken or worthless. Nobody wanted them, but they had this ability to get on base. And there's a number of ways that you can get on base. You can hit the ball and run, or you can get walked. So if you be patient and you wait for 4 balls that aren't in the strike zone, you can be walked to first base. And the concept that I didn't understand, that I now understand, is why that metric is so important is when you get to first base, and particularly if you're walked to first base, because if you hit it, they can throw the ball to the first baseman before you get to the base and you can get out. But if you get walked, you can't get out. And the cool thing is if you build a team that have an exceptionally high percentage rate of being able to get on base, it means that you don't get out very often. You stay at bat more often and you end up with more runs. Because if you get on base, you've eliminated the possibility of getting out. But if you're focusing on smacking the cover off the ball and trying to hit it 6 rows into the crowd, there is a very high percentage that you can get out. Like Babe Ruth was very well known in the history of baseball, and he was always well known for his ability to hit home runs. But there's a statistic about Babe Ruth that's very rarely talked about, and that was he was struck out more than most players as well. So he took a lot of risks, but people only remember the glory. And so the Oakland A's were focusing on this metric of get on base. And so the principle I want to unpack in this video is that there are generally accepted practices in every industry and in every part of your business. There are generally accepted practices. As an example, in Black Belt, we talk about a thing called a daily direction meeting, and it's a very specific meeting that has a very specific purpose, a very specific agenda, and you need to prepare for it to give you the value, and you need to have a very specific focus for it to give you the value. But when you do it right, the value that it creates within your business and your team is phenomenal if it's done correctly. And so in my world, that activity, running a daily direction meeting, is a get on base activity. How often do we do a daily direction meeting would be a metric, but also the following the direction of how to do a daily direction meeting is the key thing. Not just having some random meeting every day isn't a daily direction meeting. It's got a proper theme. It's got a certain preparation. It's got an agenda and a focus. But the gap, the generally accepted practice, is just get on with it. We'll talk while we're on site or whatever. We'll have a conversation. But that's the generally accepted practice. And because of the generally accepted practice, a whole lot of miscommunications, a whole lot of opportunities to refine how your team work in the office or on site, depending on where you're applying the daily direction meeting, it can be profound. And it's like a 7-minute investment, but following a very specific choreography, and it's profound. But you have to decide whether you're going to follow the rest of the herd like sheep and be part of the generally accepted practices, or you're going to do something that no one else considers, this get on base metric, and perform a daily direction meeting with a proper agenda and a proper focus and proper preparation, lots of P words, and then you can gain the value out of it. And the other thing that we're finding with all of this stuff is that the get on base activity is generally boring. And we had a massive conversation about this over the 3 days of our in-person intensive in Perth a couple of weeks ago, that we've got to be comfortable with the things that really work long term and can create success in your business and in your life. Those activities are generally boring. Those get on base activities are boring because you're trying to get walked to base, not keeping it exciting and having the thrill of will he make it to first base or not. No, do whatever you need to do to get walked to first base. Do these boring activities. Do the preparation. Discipline yourself to ensure that you're doing these meetings every day. So you can be a victim of the generally accepted practices, or you can be the master of your own destiny by exhibiting that boring behavior and committing to that discipline of doing that get on base activity. As I said, the purpose of these videos are for me to understand things more clearly and be able to explain them more effectively. I hope I've done that in some fashion. I'd love to get your feedback. I'd love to hear your comments about it if this made any sense to you. And I'd love to have a conversation. If you're in business, if you've got a small business and you're struggling with anything really, as far as you've been trying all sorts of things and it's just not working out the way you wanted, maybe we can have a conversation and I can point you in the right direction with it, with a few ideas. More than happy to do that. I specialise in residential builders, but if you're seeing this on LinkedIn and you'd love to have a chat about something, I'm up for that. Just shoot us a message through LinkedIn and maybe we'll jump on Zoom or whatever and have a conversation and see where it takes us. No harm, no foul. Hope this was valuable. See you in the next video. That's all. I'm Mick Hawes, Builder's Business Black Belt. Bye for now.